Okay, hi, I'm Doug Gibson from Plan 9 Crunch, and we are talking with Martin Powell, who is a genre author who has written, it's got to be dozens, right? Novels and things,
Hundreds.
hundreds. That's what I thought because I did just a look of work by you, and I kept getting page after page after page. So you're a freelance writer. Do you write every day?
Oh, yes, yes.
How long have you
Yeah,
been doing it?
um, sold my first story in 1986.
1986.
Um,
Wow, we're going on. This
and
is the 40th year then.
yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, that's scary. Yeah, yeah, it is. I became full time around 1993.
Now you live in. We'll get back to the writing. You live in Florence, Alabama, right?
Yes,
Are you there right now?
I am.
Okay, that's the northwest portion of the state. My father's family, maybe an hour's drive from you.
Oh
They're
wow.
Gunnersville, Arab, Union Grove,
Yeah, yeah. Sure,
Huntsville.
sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I gotta ask you something now. If first, I'm going to ask you, are you a football fan?
No, not really.
Okay, so you don't have a preference between Auburn or Alabama,
I would probably choose Alabama.
huh? Me too. Okay. My earliest memories are I'm 62. My earliest memories of my dad, sitting down watching Alabama football and Bear Bryant. But
Oh,
now,
sure, yeah.
let's get back to your writing. Now, I've read two of your books recently,
Oh,
and one is Kolchak the Night Stalker, The Mothman
mhm.
Requiem, which is a
Right.
conventional novel. I'm a big Kolchak fan. I really consider that series to be 20 separate movies, to be honest, B movies.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, and I want to ask you a question about it. Well, later we're going to talk also about the Universal films. I know you have a love of those. Okay, but
Mhm.
the is the Mothman, without getting into the plot, is the Mothman Requiem kind of based on COVID?
Um, yeah, you could say
Okay,
that.
okay.
It was going on at the time I was writing it, so, and there was
Mhm,
no vaccine at that particular point.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah, yeah, that you could say that.
Okay, I'm a journalist. I mean, I retired now, and, so that's part of the reason I like Kolchak. I like the banter between Vicencio and Updike and Kolchak, and, I'm just glad I don't work for the Hollywood, what is it, the Hollywood Dispatch or something? It was
Yeah, that's what they yeah, Jeff Rice, the creator of Kolchak, I don't know, a few years right before he passed away, decided that he wanted Kolchak at a different newspaper in Los Angeles.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we really had no choice but to do that. I would have preferred to keep him in Chicago, but you notice that I got him to Chicago anyway, though.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
right away to investigate the first thing. Rice had a kind of a sad life,
he did,
unfortunately.
he did,
Yeah,
he did.
yeah.
Poor fellow.
I do have his books, though. I read them, they're really
Hmm.
good. And, do you think that is this the only Kolchak you've written? Or have you
I wrote I wrote a short story that was in an anthology published
Mhm,
back around 2009 called
mhm.
the Abominable Iceman, which was about the Minnesota Iceman, which was a carnival exhibit that went around the country and showed up there at the Minnesota State Fair every year through the 60s. And of
Oh,
course, I had it come to life. So um, that was that one. But other than that, that's all I've done with Carl. Um, but I enjoyed every minute of it. He's one of my all-time favorite characters. I hope I was able to present him in a way that seemed realistic, at least.
I think it was, and I also I like the scene where he's talking to John A. Keel, and
Yeah,
Keel sort of gives Kolchak an understanding of what he's going through in his entire life, right?
yeah. I knew John Keel, and I one time mentioned to him. I said, you're like a life Carl Kolchak, and he laughed and he said, "Yeah, I guess I am." And so I had to put that in there.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Okay, now I wanna talk a little bit about these Sherlock Holmes mysteries. By the way, tell me about Moonstone Publishing. You publish a lot for them, right?
Yeah, quite a bit. They're situated in Illinois, right
Mhm.
outside Chicago. and the publisher Joe Gentili is a good friend of mine. He kind of searched me out back in the early 2000s to reprint some of my books that had been published a decade or so before, and
Mhm.
that's kind of what started all that, and probably the editions you have, I would imagine. Um, and we became friends, and we both like the same old kind of pulpy stuff,
Mhm.
and so I ended up doing quite a lot for him. In fact, he just I just talked to him last night, and we're planning something new right now.
Well,
So
didn't you mention a possible idea on Facebook recently for possible, theme for what you're gonna write about? Maybe I'm wrong. I was trying to bring my if these are under wraps right now, you don't have to tell me. I
uh,
just
no, 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 it's okay. I am writing a new Sherlock Holmes novel.
that's what I read, yes.
It's a prose novel, not a graphic novel, and I'm probably about 40,000 words into it, something like that. So
Mm.
it's about not quite half done, but I hope to have it ready by this summer.
How many words do you tend to try to write a day?
Oh my goodness, good words or just words?
Well, I mean, words turn into good words with rewrites and edits, right?
That's true. Yeah, it's very necessary. Not too many rewrites though.
Mhm.
Um, I think if I can do like if I'm writing a prose novel or a short story, if I can do about 10 double spaced, yes, I still write double spaced.
Mhm.
um, if I can write about 10 double spaced pages a day that are like good tight pages, I think
Mhm.
that I've done pretty good for the day.
That's good. Now, Sherlock Holmes mysteries, we'll talk about the plots because they intermingle with, the Universals,
A little
classics.
bit.
I get the feeling that you're thinking of, Basil Rathbone a bit in your Sherlock Holmes.
I don't think anybody who's a fan of Sherlock Holmes cannot think of Basil
Yeah.
Rathbone. But yeah, yeah, a bit. I think at the time I didn't have any particular actor in my head when I was writing that script.
Mhm.
But I tried to stay as close to Conan Doyle actually as I possibly could. Although in Scarlet and Gaslight in particular, I think I gave Holmes a little bit more personality than we're used to seeing him have.
Well, he's
But
an interesting fellow. The one I have is the first one. I should tell you the name of it. Gaslight, yeah, with well, maybe I'm messing up. Maybe that's a theme name, but it's Dracula and
mhm,
Lucy and Professor Moriarty and Holmes
right.
being somewhat traumatized through it, right?
Yeah, I that was the whole reason I wanted to write that story because I thought that um, there were other Holmes Sherlock Holmes like supernatural stories being written at the time by other writers, and I never felt that they they handled Holmes properly because he
Hmm.
didn't believe in the supernatural.
Hmm.
And I thought if you put him in that position, he wouldn't suddenly be an expert like these other writers had him. I thought he would be actually out of his element. And it would be fun to see how Sherlock Holmes would react, in a world that wasn't his own.
Well,
And
he certainly gets an education in that book, doesn't he?
yes, he does.
I mean, the what's funny is these are basic not funny, but what's interesting is these are basically based on the Universal classics, and they're intermixed with the Sherlock Holmes world, but they're a bit spicier than the movies I remember seeing, alright? But that's probably due to the graphic novel, right?
Yeah, it's I tried to stick as close to
Mhm,
Bram Stoker in that as well, but I found that by writing Dracula when I first started writing the story that
mhm.
every time Dracula came up, if I wrote him just as a monster, I lost interest in him,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
so I decided to do a little bit different take on him, which at the time was kind of unique. Now there's all kinds of sympathetic vampires, but at the time you didn't see that much. I guess maybe a little bit of Barnabas Collins thrown in there too, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
I don't wanna get too much into the plot, but there is interesting plot sequences in the book.
Yeah,
Particularly
I think really probably more than anything at the time I was throwing Hammer the old Hammer movies, with Christopher
Mhm,
Lee and Peter Cushing,
mhm, mhm.
kind of mixing those in there a bit, which were a bit spicier, as you say, and a bit more visceral.
What's it like working with a graphic artist? Because when I'm reading the book, I'm not a graphic artist reader of this until
Hmm.
recent, and I'm thinking, geez, he's got to almost like he's writing a script for a movie or something, right?
Yeah, that's very much what it's like. You're writing if I'm writing a prose novel like I'm doing right now, I'm writing for everybody reading it, right?
Mhm.
But when I'm writing something like Scarlet and Gaslight, I'm writing for the artist, treating him almost like I'm a movie director and he's an actor. And I'm telling him what everything, all that needs to be there, the set director too, and what angles to go by, and close ups, far shots, bird's eye views, things like that.
Oh, yeah,
So yeah, it puts them through their paces for sure. Not everybody can do that. I've been really lucky to have some that were really some of the best.
and there's pacing too. All of a sudden, we're dealing with what's going on with Dracula and somebody else, and the next page we're
Mhm.
going to something else, but it still fits within like a novel would fit through passages, right?
Yeah, one of the keys to writing a graphic novel or a comic book story is to end the page in such a way that you want to turn the next one.
Mhm, mhm.
And so and you kind of have to figure, not every single page should end in some kind of dramatic cliffhanger, but you know what I mean. The reader should have a reason to want to turn the page.
Oh, definitely, and, so do you are you in contact often with the illustrator also?
It depends on the project. In this case, the early home stuff I did, yeah, I was we were very close in contact. His name was Seppo Makinen,
Yeah, I see it
and
here.
sadly, I don't know if Seppo is still alive. I'd heard that he was very ill some years ago, and we lost touch.
Oh.
But he was wonderful to work with, and he was actually a Canadian wildlife artist. Is really where his roots were, and he wanted to do comics, and so did I, and so we did those.
'Cause I was wondering 'cause forgive me, I was wondering if the illustrator illustrated based on what they read, or you were writing based on what you saw, or they just gave you what they were supposed to do, and you both put it in with and it mixed together and you or less you see what I'm saying?
hmm I I wrote basically a full script for him,
Mhm.
which he followed to the letter. I have to
Okay.
say. Now, in some cases, he did change things a little, but they were for the better because an artist usually can think visually better in terms than a writer can.
Mhm.
And so when he would change things, almost in fact, every time I could think of that he did make a change, it was for the better. And so after a while, you just become a kind of a team, and the important thing is just telling the story in words and pictures.
No, I really enjoy this. I mean, the very first few pages, I was trying to figure out everything because I hadn't read this genre before, but I quickly got
hmm
into it. Was finding
Oh,
the
thanks.
the way I was supposed to go. Because sometimes I think, why am I reading this? But no, because I was a novice at it, and I figured it out, and I found it very, very exciting. And you left, without going into the plot, you left the possibility, of future writing, which you may have done for all I know. I get the feeling this was written quite a while ago, right?
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In fact, Scarlet and Gaslight is really the story that really kind of jump started my whole career. Really,
Well, how many
I
Sherlock
mean,
Holmes have you done?
I've done the book I'm working on now will be my 10th Sherlock Holmes book.
Gotta catch up with stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
You have such a wide genre because I was looking at books you've written, and they go from childhood stories to the genres, films, and things
hmm
like that.
hmm
Tarzan, you've done some Tarzans. I gotta pick some of those up. I love Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah.
And let's go to the second story, though, because this was interesting. You brought the Invisible Man into the story, and you sort of made Watson a benevolent accomplice of his as opposed to the guy in the movie who you don't have much sympathy for.
Yeah.
And how much fun was that thinking these things out, mixing these
Oh, it was a
characters?
lot. It was a lot of fun. I had done Scarlet and Gaslight, already a year, maybe 2 years before, and it had really surprised everyone in that it sold out its original print run really quick and it was nominated for awards and everything. This is
Mhm,
my really kind of my first major outing, so it was a big shock
mhm,
to me. And they wanted another Sherlock Holmes book from me, and it was never my intention to develop like a Sherlock Holmes team up kind of idea.
mhm.
But that's what ended up happening, and I just kind of thought of the Invisible Man and how truly terrifying such a thing would be. And I've always loved the book and the movies. And so I went through the Holmes saga, which, by the way, I read all four novels and all 56 short stories complete before I started writing either one of those books.
Mm,
So,
mhm.
so I was deep into it, and I found little places actually in Holmes's chronology where this would fit. And I thought, well, there's no reason why he couldn't have met H.G. Wells' Invisible Man. In fact, if there had been an Invisible Man, Holmes would have known about it.
Probably would
You
have
know,
run into the case, wouldn't he?
yeah, yeah, he absolutely would have. And so I thought that would be fun because in Scarlet and Gaslight, he's a bit out of his depth, but I think in the case of Blind Fear, he's right, where he belongs. He's the one that suddenly, if you eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, kind of thing.
Well, you've got this,
Uh,
maybe it's a subplot, maybe it isn't. You got him perplexed at why Watson is being rather remote to him, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. I wanted to put a little rift in
And
there.
you've got some romance, okay? You've got sort of reluctant romance for Holmes, right? Without getting into
Hmm.
too much details.
Yeah, yeah. The character Irene Adler, who
Mhm.
is in the original stories. At least she plays a part in one of the original Conan Doyle stories,
No,
and
I
she's
knew that, I
mentioned
knew
in
that,
some
yeah,
others.
and it kinda reminds me of Poirot and the Countess, alright? I don't know if you read
Right.
Agatha
Yeah.
Christie. Okay.
Right. 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 Yeah.
But you threw a scene in there, I'm not gonna get into details, I thought, "Oh my gosh, what's happening here?" And then I realized it was not really what it seemed to be in that
Uh,
book between.
the the bathing scene.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And of course, he wakes up from his wonderful dream, I guess, Well, we should
Yeah.
watch
I I basically wanted to show the reader that Holmes is a human being,
Yeah.
and what he might think about sometimes when he's not trying to control his
Mm,
brain.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah, and I had a lot of fun with that actually. I'm not one of these. I know there's a lot of fan fiction right now about
Mhm.
Sherlock Holmes, and a lot of them are always tossing him into romances. And
Yeah.
uh, I personally don't believe that. Just this is just me as a fan and as a reader of Holmes. I don't believe Holmes would ever be involved in a genuine romance. I really don't think he ever would. I don't think he's really capable of it.
Yeah, I think you're
Um,
right. I think you're right.
he's just too bizarre. So, but I thought, if I could show that maybe there's a part of him that longs for that, but he knows he can't. He knows that's just not going to work, and
It's
so it doesn't.
interesting.
But yeah.
You say this was written a long time ago, and it
Mhm.
was well done and everything, and there is a lot of fan fiction. I hate the term fan fiction. Fiction based on other sources, perhaps. There's a lot of it out there now.
Mhm.
More than I mean, Bear Manor is publishing a lot of it, I know, and I tend to like, what's her name? Jane Austen, and I
Oh yeah.
remember 15 years ago just saying, "Oh, look at this little, unauthorized sequel, it's fun." Now if I go check, there's like 100 of 'em out there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Jane Austen.
Oh, go on.
Jane Austen is kind of irresistible for writers in a lot of ways because I consider her probably the best dialogue writer in the English language.
Oh, she's superb, in fact, my wife and I are watching a TV show on Netflix, and I'm asking her, "Well, 200 years ago, did they have soft-core people trying to imitate Jane Austen?" I'm just wondering, all right.
That's interesting. That's a question that I've never actually heard anybody ask before.
Well, you have
That
you need you
like,
need you need to watch Bridgerton, okay?
yeah. Well, my wife's a big fan of that. I've seen
Okay.
it myself a few times. It's a good show. But yeah, I've often wondered, like in the Victorian era, were there like teenagers, for example, who were reading this stuff and writing their own kind of version of
Oh,
fan fiction for that day.
the irony is I can watch this show with my wife, but if I went off on my own to try to find that genre, I'd be reproved, all right? But it's just interesting to me, the fan fiction, and it's interesting to me when you can take characters like you're doing here successfully and merge them in with other people, with other
Hmm.
genres, with other stories like the Universal classics and Sherlock Holmes. I guess he does fall into the classics anyways, because Universal made those films. But
Right.
you told me you not only Bathel Rasbon, you're trying to get into Conan Doyle's idea too, right? When you're writing these things.
Right. Yeah. I tried not to do anything that I felt was contradictory, to something
Mhm.
that Doyle would have written. He would never, for example, have had Holmes, involved in a genuine romance. It just
Mm.
would not have happened. So I tried to keep that up, and I tried also to keep his. One, it's hard to write Sherlock Holmes actually, and because his mind is always working so quickly, and you try to make it believable, as you can, but at the same time, he's extraordinary. I mean, he's practically superhuman in a lot of
Oh,
ways.
oh yeah, he gets
um,
he gets to the in his books, he gets to the point once he gets his idea, he knows what's going on. He makes sure that he acts on it and things like that.
yeah, yeah.
Now, if you were going to this may be a hard question for you. If you were going to recommend a book for readers who are listening to this podcast about Sherlock Holmes, what might be 1 or 2 you advise?
Of the original Holmes books, you mean?
No, the books you wrote.
Oh, the books I wrote.
'Cause we can
Oh,
we can we
yikes.
can read the Holmes books on our Internet Archive if we need to.
Well, that's true. Um, well, I think, although Scarlet and Gaslight has always been the one that's gotten the most attention. I
Mm,
mean, I still sign copies of it whenever I do convention signings and so
mhm,
forth. Every time there's still it's out there. I mean, it's been published, I think, in nine different printings, I think.
mhm.
So there's a lot of different editions to it. But the one that I prefer is actually the case of a case of blind fear.
Case of
That's
okay.
that's the one where I felt like I was finally starting to kind of know what I was doing, and because I was still learning in Scarlet and Gaslight. There were a
Mhm.
couple of times I remember where I plotted myself into a corner, and was kind of like, okay, now what? So, um,
Well, the Sherlock Holmes
but yeah, that's
Mysteries
probably
Volume
what I would
1
do.
would be an excellent book to buy then, right?
Yeah, yeah, it has both of them in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll probably try
So
to put a
yeah.
link on that, okay. I wanted to ask you you know what? Because we sort of brought it up, what is your favorite Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes story?
I get asked that a lot. um, I think that probably, and this is gonna, everybody probably pretty much will say this, but I think it's probably Hound of the Baskervilles,
Okay.
um, in which I've adapted myself twice. It's the only Sherlock Holmes. Those are the only Sherlock Holmes books that I've ever written that were adapted from the actual stories. My other Holmes stories are all original stories. But I did a kids version of Hound of the Baskervilles, and then later on for Dark Horse, I wrote a more grown up version of it
Okay.
that follows the book a lot closer.
Great. I'm gonna look for that. I'm gonna nerd out here for a second because I do wanna get to the movies, but you bring up questions for me. What do you think of the contemporaries, or maybe a couple decades later, of people like Leslie Charteris and the Saints, or Edgar Wallace and his crime novels? Any interest in
Hmm.
those?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. Edgar Wallace in particular, I think is got some great stuff.
I
Um,
I I started buying Edgar Wallace novels because 'cause they're, like, free, okay, on 'cause I read we all know, it's called Human Monster here, but it's called something Dark Eyes of London, I guess.
sure, yeah,
So
oh yeah,
I
it's
I
great.
I bought the I didn't buy it because it was free, on Kindle, the novel, and it wasn't the same, but it was a fantastic tale, it
Oh
really was,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I've
It's a
read 3
really powerful story.
yeah, and I've read 3 or 4 of his too, and he's really good.
Yeah,
I
it's kind of sad to me that he's I don't want to say forgotten because obviously he's not. We're talking about him, but that he's not as appreciated as he used to be because he used to be a really big deal.
Yeah, he was.
And he's kind of faded, and that's a shame. I think if there were a couple new movies or something, or TV series or something like on Netflix that was based on his work,
That would
it would
be an
bring him back
idea.
some.
The German films
Yeah.
they made of his, I didn't like. I sought out about 4 or 5 of them that were made in the late
Hmm.
'50s, early '60s, maybe that did it because they weren't that great. But boy, I
Mm.
I am glad we do have, Human Monster and
Oh
and
yeah.
going to watch in his now, tell me a little bit about your Tarzan books.
Well, I was connected to I've been connected, well, still am connected to Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated for
Mhm.
12 years or so, going on 13. We They were running a series of comic strips on their web page based on some of Burroughs books,
Mm.
and I submitted some proposals and whatnot, and I ended up writing like 11 different series for
I
them
noticed
over
that
the
you've written a
years.
lot. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot more than anybody else actually. They tell me so. But it's great. Burroughs is actually, if you really have to, if I really have to choose, Burroughs is probably my favorite author ever because he just had everything in it that I wanted when I first discovered him when I was about 12 years old.
I was maybe the
Dinosaurs
same
and
age. I read tons of his John Carter stuff and stuff like that.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, the Martian stuff is
Yeah.
great,
Oh.
and Tarzan too in there. Of course, the people who haven't experienced Tarzan except in the movies don't really know the real Tarzan.
Mhm.
And so that was a big surprise to me too when I first read Tarzan of the Apes. I think I was 13, and I was kind of like, wow, this is this. I mean, I like the movies, but I was like, this guy's a lot cooler
Yeah, they were really
than
good.
what they
They
show in the movie.
they were
But yeah, so I was doing those different comic strips, and it came to I came to the conclusion that that I was really wanting to do Tarzan really bad, but Roy Thomas, the great Roy Thomas, is was doing the Tarzan material for Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. So and I respected that, but
mhm,
I thought there's got to be a way for me to do something with this, and so I ended up taking Burroughs' book, Jungle Tales of Tarzan, which I think was the sixth Tarzan book he wrote. I think I might have that wrong. Um, and it's an anthology kind of. Uh, there's stories of Tarzan about a year or so before he met Jane.
mm,
So he doesn't know civilization yet or anything. He's still very much the ape man, and each there's 12 individual stories that have a beginning, middle, and end. And I was looking at it and I thought this would make a great graphic novel. And wouldn't it be cool if each story would be from a different artist?
mhm.
And so I thought about it for a while, and I could think of several artists that I knew and were friends with that loved Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I thought, I bet if I offer this to them, they'll want to do it. And so I did, and then we worked out a deal with Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated and Dark Horse Comics to
Mhm.
publish it, and so um, that's how that happened, and it's still a good seller from what I'm told, and
What are the 2 new
so
ones gonna be about, do you know right now?
no, I don't actually.
Okay,
No,
okay, but you have a
no.
you're planning to write more, right? Those 2 news.
Yeah, oh yeah, I have several different things going on at the same time, but there's some things that are still kind of percolating while I'm trying to,
Mhm. I wanted to ask.
decide where they're going to go and when I'm going to do them.
No, I
But
understand
yeah,
brainstorming. The reason I ask you about the writing is I think a lot of people, myself included, I could write a book on procrastination, would love to get an idea of how much you write, each day. And do you write in spurts, or do you have a set time you write every day?
Mm. I found out a long time ago, like back in the '90s when I really started cooking, that if I didn't treat it like a job, I was not going to get
Mhm.
anywhere.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, it used to be that I was the typical, romantic, vision of a writer, burning the midnight oil and all that kind of stuff while the world slept around you,
Mhm.
But no, I decided, if I'm going to do this full time, it was right around the time when I was doing some writing for Disney
Mhm.
that I decided that I have to treat this like a real job, and so I start like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm usually writing till around 6 that evening,
So it's a full
and
day job for you.
yeah, it is,
Mm.
but it's like they say, it's only work if there's something else you'd rather be doing,
That's a good
so
point. If you're doing this in yeah, yeah,
yeah, so
that's
I think
good.
James Barrie said that about the creator of Peter Pan. I think that's where that quote comes
It's a
from.
good line.
So
I mean, I recently retired and I'm trying to write, but I find myself having to take a break after 2 hours and then go
yeah,
back later in the day. I
well, yeah,
maybe I should stop thinking of it as work.
well, there's really no. I mean, I'm constantly being asked, by people, like what should I, how should I do this? What should I do? And
Mhm,
really, there's no set way for
mhm.
this to be done. It's really basically whatever works for you.
That's a good point. Was it Dorothy Parker who said, "I hate writing but love having written"? you know?
Yeah, there is a lot of that going around out there. I I I personally find it a little irksome that I still like, especially on Facebook, where you'll see people complain. I mean, and these are known writers. I mean, known authors that are
Mhm.
bestsellers and complaining about what they're doing. I'm kind of like, are you people nuts? I mean,
That's a good point.
this is all that we ever wanted to do, and you're complaining about it now that you're successful and famous.
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
don't get it. I mean, yes, it could be frustrating, like any job. At
Yeah.
times you're not going to feel like doing it. But there's ways around that. You have to. Ray Bradbury. I was lucky enough that he was a mentor to me. We were
Mm.
friends, and I met him at just the right time at the start of my career, where he really, uh, helped me a lot with just at certain advice, and his advice sometimes you didn't want to hear because he didn't pull any punches. um, but he basically just said, "You look, you got to do it." He said, "You can't wait till the time is right. You got to jump off the cliff and hope you'll grow your wings on the way down." And
That's totally true, definitely.
yeah, and so that's what I did, and he was right. I mean, he this is the piece of advice that he gave me that I tried to tell everyone else who's interested in writing. And it was something that completely bewildered me, and I can't really explain it today, but I understand it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
He told me, he said, when you're writing a story, any story, he said, start as close to the end as you possibly can.
Mm.
And I was like, what? And so
Mhm.
and he laughed and said, after you've written about 1 million words, you'll know what I mean. He said, your brain will rewire itself and you'll know exactly what I mean. And he was right. You know,
That's good advice. That's good advice.
about 5 or 6 years later, I remember sitting at the keyboard, and suddenly it just clicked, and I understood exactly what he meant. It's hard for me to explain it, but I understand it.
But over time, your writing gets better, right?
I would hope so.
And you mentioned
Um,
earlier that you see things, you look at the Scarlet, what's it called again? Scarlet and
Scarlet and Gaslight.
Gaslight, and
Hmm.
you see progress in your writing talents when you write things like the Kate, the Invisible Man story also.
Yeah,
Case
yeah,
of Blind Fear, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, again, one of the things Ray always said was, he said, when you're starting out, try writing a short story every week. He
Hmm.
said, and at the end of a year, he said, don't even worry about the quality, just write it. And he said, at the end of a year, you'll have 52 short stories, and it's impossible for them all to be bad.
That's a
You
good
know,
point.
so
That's an excellent point. So I think
so
repetition is
really,
very important, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
just doing the job, you're learning if you know you are or not.
Mhm,
If you
mhm.
want to or not. You're learning it. So it's the only really real advice that any writer can give another that wants to be a writer is just you got to write.
That's
And
that's that's totally correct. You just get
yeah,
them started. You don't have to have a degree to it. You just have to write
no,
it. Now, I
no.
wanna sometimes on Facebook, I've enjoyed some of your impromptu, reviews of films, okay, that after you've watched one, and particularly, in the Universal classics.
Hmm.
And I I've watched them many times like everybody else, but this week I tried to watch several of them. And I wanted to get an idea of what you feel about these films. The first one, of course, it saved them. Well, legend says it saved them from bankruptcy. I don't know if it did, but was Dracula. How do you think
Hmm.
Dracula was impacted? What was impactful about Dracula that made it so successful for Universal?
Uh, Lots of different things. I think I personally think that Dracula is the most maligned, unfairly maligned of all the Universal monster movies,
Oh,
because you constantly are hearing people. Not so much today, but you go back about
the 70s, the
10.
70s, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right around that time. That's
Yeah,
perfect, actually.
yeah.
When it just seemed like everybody hated it, and everybody made fun of Bela Lugosi's performance. But if you're looking at it from the point of view of the audience at the time, which that's one of the things that I've been kind of gifted with, that I've always appreciated, is that I can watch movies without saying, "Oh, they're dated" or whatever. That I can watch a movie appreciating that, I'm in the audience with them in the 1930s,
Mhm, mhm.
and get that kind of impact from them. So that's something that I think it's another one of the reasons why I like, older movies so much anyway. But Dracula was very different than anything that was coming out of Hollywood at the time. It was the first, far as I know anyway, it was the first genuine supernatural sound movie
Mhm.
um, that was ever produced, where it wasn't, like a Scooby Doo ending where it was, somebody faking it all or whatever.
Yeah.
This was a real vampire. These were real. There was a Walking Dead guy going around London sucking blood. And if you put yourself in like an audience in 1931, that's when
That's
there was really
scary.
nothing like that going on at the time. There was really nothing like it in the movies. I can really believe that it gave people nightmares.
I
you
think
know
so too. You know, Lugosi too. Lugosi was so charismatic in that film. In
well, he,
any
he
film, even if you
was.
see films in the '20s, which he's a supporting character, your eyes go toward him. Uh,
Yeah, he was one of those rare things where he was a stage actor primarily, but the camera loved him.
yeah, and
And that's something that you don't really see happen very often.
And if you watch Dracula, it gets criticized, but if you watch Dracula, you are waiting for Lugosi to be in the film, okay?
Oh yeah.
In fact, the first 35 minutes of that film is perfect, and the rest is almost
Hmm.
perfect. But the thing is that I watched yesterday Dracula, and then I watched the Spanish Dracula, a
Hmm.
movie I like, but uh, Carlos Villarreal is like just another character in that movie, and he's in the film too long, okay?
Yeah.
But Lugosi, you're waiting for every scene. That's my idea of the strength of that film.
Oh yeah, I think so too. And in that regard, I think that the Universal really knew what they were doing, and even the early stage play writers, because Dracula is really not in the book that much.
No, he isn't. Yeah.
And I mean, you feel the presence of him throughout the entire book, and it's very ominous. But to have a movie like that, I think it would be like, okay, where's Dracula? After a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
Um, but uh, but and you want to, this is something too that I've always said. Now, I don't get me wrong. I love the novel Dracula. I think it's
Mhm.
one of the best books of its kind ever written. But there's one thing in it that I'm really shocked that Bram Stoker never had happen that almost all the movies do, which is you know a a fate a kind of a face off between Dracula and Van Helsing, which
Mhm.
never happens in the book.
Mhm.
People are surprised when I say that when they haven't read it, but no, it never happens. They never face each other, one on one, like they do in Bela's movie, which is a most powerful scene in the movie, I think.
Oh, it is.
Uh, and because here you have these kind of archetypes almost of one side or the other, kind of the good mystic and then the evil vampire, and it's just a great scene, and you want the scene almost to go on, but it cuts off just the right moment, really,
It
with
does.
him producing the cross and Dracula leaving. But no, I think it's an amazing movie, and uh, I the Spanish version I like a great deal too, and I also have to agree with you that I think that it gets a lot. I think it gets overpraised these
Mhm.
days,
It does.
um, and because I'm not quite sure why it is being. I, I've watched them both back to back several times before, and a
Same
lot of
here.
people make fun of Todd Browning's direction and say it's all stagey and cardboard and all this kind of stuff. But I disagree. I think that what George Melford did with the Spanish version, it's a great looking movie, and he did some really cool things with the camera and so forth. But I think he almost is overselling it.
He is because there's too many scenes, like, you have that scene you're talking about, the best scene in the movie between Van Helsing. They cut away from that to go to another strong scene when the young woman is, under this spell with her fiancé. I'm not giving names 'cause they changed the names in both films, but
Yeah,
those are 2 very strong scenes, and you cut back and forth with Melford's film, so it loses its impact, and also, people criticize not having Lucia's fate, but they throw Lucia's fate right before they go to the castle. I mean, the pacing is just a problem. Too much
yeah, it
yeah,
is.
gives you an idea of why. Now, tell me I wanna say something of Frankenstein, first of all. I grew up seeing Frankenstein as a shambling monster. and it was such a revelation when I was a young adult to finally see Frankenstein 1931.
Hmm.
Tell me the strength of that movie in your opinion.
Ah, um, well, it's to me, although I prefer of the two, I think that The Bride of Frankenstein is the better movie
Oh,
in a lot of ways.
I do too, but the
Um,
Karloff performances.
but but that first movie, um, uh, not this is probably not going to make sense because I've just said that I think The Bride is better. But that first movie, the first Frankenstein movie, I think is probably the greatest horror movie ever made,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's the only one really of the Universal saga where the monster is genuinely frightening,
Mhm, mhm.
and meant to be, and it's a trick on us because he's not supposed to be. I mean, he's not a bad guy really, you know, and yet we're scared of him for the same reason that the people in the movie are. He looks
Mhm,
strange,
mhm.
he's kind of unearthly. Um,
His
but yeah, there's
herky-jerky
that.
movements got to me in that movie.
Yeah, yeah, and he. I remember reading something what Karloff was talking about the way he decided to pantomime that role, and it was very similar to something that Christopher Lee said years later. That they felt like here's a creature that's made up of all these different parts, from different corpses and so forth, and they felt that they wouldn't all work properly. That his brain wasn't totally in control
Mhm,
of every single part of his body, and so you can
mhm.
kind of tell, especially with Christopher Lee's performance, it's very much like that. He's almost like some kind of monstrous marionette almost,
Good
the
point.
way he plays the character. But Boris, no, that's just like Lugosi's Dracula. I mean, that was like a definitive performance there. That I don't think they expected that to happen at all. I believe Universal was just trying to make a little bit more money, kind of on the heels of Dracula, and they thought, well, let's get this guy who's kind of a bit player, and we don't have to pay him much, and then look what happened.
Well, they were
So
wise too, to have the makeup reflect the suffering
mhm. Yeah,
on Boris Karloff's face because it was
yeah.
so tedious and hard for him.
Yeah, it's probably, I think, we take it for granted today because we see it all the time. We see it everywhere. But at the time, it must have been, um, really just a startling experience to see that. Especially, you've when you first see him, he's backing through the door, and then we get that series of close-ups. I can just see the audience, reacting in recoil, with each little click,
Oh, yeah.
of the camera, So, but yeah, it's brilliant makeup. I don't think there's ever been a horror character makeup that's ever quite reached it yet.
And I think James Whale was pretty good too.
Oh yeah.
Look, I have a lot of respect for Browning, and I recommend to our listeners to read Gary Rhodes' Todd Browning's Dracula,
Hmm.
and going back to that thing. But James Whale also was able to elicit really good performances out of supporting co-stars in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
In Bride of Frankenstein, Ernest Thesiger is one of my favorite characters in that film.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, James Whale. The smartest thing that Universal did was early was it was bringing him on board, I think, and from what I gather, he's the one that actually chose Frankenstein to do.
yeah, and
They
he maneuvered to get Colin Clive and Boris Karloff, right, in this
Yeah,
film.
that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And if I understand Bela Lugosi was supposed to originally be cast either as Dr. Frankenstein or even the monster,
You know,
but had
oh, go on, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to say, even had that happened, it probably would have been a pretty cool, creepy movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would have become what it became. It's James Whale just seemed to bring in all the proper ingredients, and it's something that you don't get lightning in a bottle. I don't mean that as a pun.
Mhm.
Very often like that, where it just works,
Well,
and there
yeah,
it is.
and I was watching, Murders in the Rue Morgue, a film I like, and
Oh, me too.
Lugosi is magnificent in that film, but he has nobody in that cast except possibly The Undertaker that's any good, really, okay? I mean, he's carrying the whole film by himself, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're all pretty forgettable, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Even
funny,
that heroine.
I was
Yeah.
watching an Andy Griffith episode where there is a color one, there was this principal, I thought, "God, he looks familiar." And I looked, because I'm a nerd. I went into IMDb. He was the male lead in Murders in the Rue Morgue, and I thought that's
Oh,
probably the first
really?
time I've thought of that guy since, alright?
Oh, that's awesome.
And, of course, what's her name did have was people like to say she was the mistress of Lamley. I don't know if she was or not, but she had a sad life, and she wasn't a good actress, unfortunately, either.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of film, in my opinion, where Lugosi just carried it on his own, but obviously it
Oh,
didn't
he
have
did.
the
Yeah.
impact of Frankenstein.
No,
I
it's a but it's one it's another one too that bothers me that it's kind of overlooked of the Universals because it's there's a lot going on in Murders in the Rue Morgue. I think that it's got a lot going for it.
Oh, it's got wonderful atmosphere. Robert
Oh
Florey
yeah,
knew how to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. Some
Um,
of the best I think of
yeah,
any of the Universal movies.
yeah.
It's just flooded with atmosphere and wonderful performance from Bela, which is not at all like Dracula.
No, he
You
isn't,
know.
and he's really good. Also, I sometimes think, because I waste my time thinking about these things, that maybe they should have started with a streetwalker being abducted in the film rather than
Yeah.
at the what do you call it? Grand Guignol. Yeah. I don't
Hmm.
know. That's just me, my 2 cents. But,
Well, I mean, if it has a major flaw, I think that really, aside from the fact that, like you say, the supporting characters are all pretty colorless,
yeah.
is is that they those ridiculous close-ups of the chimpanzee. You know,
Oh, I
when
just
you
read
had
that
Charlie.
I read those were inserted later. You know that?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Charlie Gamora, who plays the ape in that, is wonderful, and
Yes.
he and that ape suit is fabulous. I've seen close up pictures of it, and I don't know why they felt that they needed to do that because, as far as ape suits go for that particular period, especially, I thought it looked pretty real.
Well, they overanalyzed
And
it, I guess, didn't they? Maybe.
yeah, maybe, yeah,
What is your
yeah, but
favorite collaboration in which, Lugosi and Karloff were in the same film?
ah, that's a good question. Um, well, I think that all of their collaborations wouldn't have been as good had there just been one or the other in them.
Mhm.
But probably it's hard to, the three that I would be thinking of would be the Black Cat and the Raven and Son of Frankenstein.
Those are my 3 too,
And
probably too.
and of those three, I'd have to pick Son of Frankenstein because um, I think it for one thing, I think it has actually Boris's fate. Boris's well, of course, it was Boris's swan song,
Mhm.
and I admired the fact when I was a kid when watching it that he underplays the part so much that
He does.
they could have just made him this horror thing like Jason Voorhees, and they didn't. But the main reason for Son of Frankenstein is it has Bela's I think finest ever
Performance.
yeah
Other
in a
than
motion picture. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think it's among the best. I don't know yet, but I think he took something and he had help from the director, right?
yeah, a
I
lot of
think
help. Yeah.
yeah, and Danny Perry is a writer who's written books on cult movies back in the '80s, and he wrote a book called Alternate Oscars, and he suggested that Lugosi's performance as Igor deserved an Oscar, you know?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
Um, I mean, the one of the reasons why I think it is such a fine performance is the mere fact that so many people over the years I've known so many different people who watched the movie and did not realize that that was Bela Lugosi.
Mm,
In fact,
mhm.
I had a friend who really didn't like Lugosi at all. He felt he was kind of a ham actor, and mind you, we weren't close friends. and but when he saw Son of Frankenstein for the first time, he kind of came into it after it started for a few minutes, and so he didn't know the cast really from the credits. And when he found out that that was Bela Lugosi, he was floored. I mean, literally floored. He was like, he had his jaw open. He said, "I can't believe that was Lugosi." He goes, "That was a hell of a performance."
It
And
certainly
I said,
was.
"Well," I was kind of like, see,
Yeah,
see what the guy could do,
I
but
think
yeah,
that this is just me. I think that Lugosi gave it his all in every film, all right,
oh, he
regardless
did.
of whether it was nothing, nothing production. Well, I'm not sure Karloff did that, but I don't wanna make enemies. Okay.
No, I think that Bela very much did. I think that was just part of his professional personality.
Mhm. Hmm.
that he brought. To each role, and all I've even heard some people say the asinine, make the asinine remark that the Bela is always playing the same guy. That's just
No, it's
not
ridiculous.
true.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
This it's just not true. I mean,
Mm.
nothing else that he played, um, for example, was anything like Dracula, including
Mm.
when he played other vampires,
Yeah, I agree.
so or supposed vampires,
Hmm.
so I mean, yeah, he always has a Hungarian accent, but he couldn't help that.
No, no, no.
But no, I think like the monogram movies, which always get blasted by movie critics and so forth. I love them
I
myself and
watch
watch
them
them
over and
quite
over.
often.
I watch them over
Yeah,
and over too. Yeah.
yeah, I do too. I think that they're all extremely entertaining, and it's mostly because of him. Not
Yeah.
not only because of him, but mostly.
That's a good point. You don't get the same thing from, even though they're fun to watch, you don't get the same thing from a Zuko or a Carradine Poverty Row movie that you get from
No,
Lugosi. Yeah.
no, and one of the things that I always have admired of the monograms too is that they were all, they all made it very clear from the opening credits that this was a movie starring Bela Lugosi,
Hmm.
that he was the
Hmm.
lead actor in it, and that very rarely ever happened to him, even at Universal. Um, that he hardly ever got top billing. Even in Dracula, I mean, it's not exactly top billing, but it's just the kind of the players, and this is Bela Lugosi, blah 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 blah. Instead of Bela Lugosi, and then maybe the Dracula title coming up after that. Which is probably what they should have done.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people lament Lugosi, and I have to say to myself, even though I think he was underpaid, I think if there hadn't been a Dracula and hadn't been these movies, he would have had a hard time breaking in because there was a lot of competition for actors like that
There
in
was.
films. And so ultimately, what even though he didn't get paid their route, it helped him. I think it was a fortunate thing for him to be in those movies.
Yeah,
Mm.
and people have to. They should realize too that the $500 a week, I think, is what he got
That's a
for
lot of money
Dracula.
back then.
Was yeah in 1931, well 1930 when they would have been shooting it was a lot. I mean
Mhm.
that was in a lot of cases people would have liked to have made $500 a year
Yeah, good point, good point.
in those days. So Bela did just fine in that regard. He was taken advantage of later on, sadly, and that's true. But he still has it. You look at the very latest things that he did, some of the very last things that he did, and he's still very much Bela Lugosi. He's still right there. He's still on.
That's a good point.
And
I enjoy Bride of the Monster.
oh yeah, yeah,
I like the movie. I mean, I realize it's very low budget, but anyways, Plan 9 Crunch were Ed Wood fanatics, anyways. Tell me
yeah, yeah. I like it.
one more thing. Universal started a bit of a decline in the '40s. By the mid
Hmm.
'40s, what do you think was the best Universal production in the 1940s, excluding The Wolfman, which we know is a good movie? Yeah.
I was about to say that one.
I know.
Um, um, oh, yes, that's a good. See, there's uh, several of the Universals in the '40s that I really love, and mainly I think because those are some of the earliest ones I saw. That
Hmm.
because they would show up on TV more often than
Yeah,
the older ones from the '30s. But probably, if I had to pick one, I mean, like for example, I love the Karas movies with Lon Chaney Jr.,
oh, they're
the
great.
Mummy
Yeah,
movies,
yeah,
and I loved Son of Dracula with Lon Chaney
it's a great
Jr.,
film.
who I think is great in the movie. And no, I don't think he's playing Count Dracula.
No, like, I don't think
I think
I don't think Count Dracula would be a cuckold, all right, but he is
no,
good in the movie.
yeah, he. I mean, it's called Son of Dracula for a reason, folks.
Hmm.
But I guess I would have to say Frankenstein meets the Wolfman because
That is a great movie.
I mean it's not much of a Frankenstein movie in a lot of ways, but it sure is a terrific werewolf movie.
Hmm.
And that was one. I don't know if you knew that I did this, but I back around, oh gosh, 2010 or so, I guess it was. It's been a while. When Famous Monsters, the Filmline magazine, came back its first time, um, I I approached them to do a film book. You remember how Forey used to do the film books
Yes.
back in the days before VHS?
Yeah.
That's the best we had, you know. And but they never had done a real film book on Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. They did a special issue of it, but it wasn't a film book. And so I said, I would like to do that. And the publisher was all for it right away, which I was really surprised. And then my buddy Joe Jusso, who's a Jusko, who's a Edgar Rice Burroughs artist right now. He's doing all the new covers for all their new books that they're publishing, Tarzan books and the Martian books. He did the cover for that issue of Famous Monsters, and the issue was put together as if it had been done in like 19, I don't know, 74 or something.
Hmm.
It even kind of has that date on it. It was printed on newsprint again, and so forth. Anyway, they were purposely trying to make it as retro as they possibly could,
Hmm.
and I think it pretty much succeeds on that. The only problem was when I originally wrote the film book for that, which was basically Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in prose short story form. It's
Hmm.
basically what it was. I added into it, the monster had Igor's brain, and that he was blind and he could speak. And I even went through the original screenplay and added all the authentic dialogue from the monster in there. But when it came time to be published, they decided, even though they told me that I had almost a limitless word count, they could devote the whole issue to it if they wanted to, whatever. It didn't work out, and they cut a great deal of it, and that was, oddly enough,
They cut the
perhaps kind
dialogue?
of poetically, they cut out all the monsters'
So they cut
dialogue
it out
and all.
twice, once in the
Yeah,
40s and once in
yes,
your
yes.
wow,
What are the
of
chances?
that happening. Well, it's a shame.
And
I've read the original screenplay, and I thought, like, I think Lugosi would have done a fine job.
oh yeah, I think for what he has, what they actually let him, have on the screen, I think that he's fine. He's not, especially when you realize that he's not playing the same Frankenstein monster. This is a
Oh.
different character, really, in a lot of ways. But when I was a kid, I thought he was really scary.
Well, the shambling was emulated later by Glenn Strange.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
everybody else.
as I mentioned, as a kid, that's the Frankenstein I knew of.
Yeah,
So
it
such a
still kind of
revelation.
is.
It
It
is,
still
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
is, I think. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask
Uh,
if oh, go on. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I'm done.
I'm just thinking. When you write your books, how many are people who are in it for nostalgia? Those are probably dying out, to be honest. And how many are new readers?
Hmm. I think that's a good question. I wish I had the answer to it.
Hmm.
Uh, as such, I mean, for example, I've kind of cut back on convention appearances and so on and so
Hmm.
forth in the last couple of years. Got done hundreds of them, but
Hmm.
and so I don't really get to meet a lot of the newer readers these days. I do have a fairly loyal audience that's followed me for, gosh, the last few decades now. It's making me feel a little creaky,
Hmm.
but uh, but I know it can't be just them, because I've made a living at this. So
Hmm. Yeah.
it can't be just them. I know that, for example, my children's books are very popular, and they're worldwide.
Yeah, I saw
And
those when I was Googling you this morning. Okay.
yeah, and yeah, they've gone through multiple printings
Mm,
too, and they're in several different languages. But I very rarely ever get to meet any of my younger readers,
mm,
for obvious reasons.
yeah.
And unless I'm doing like a library signing or reading or something like that, I just don't get to meet them. I don't know much. Now, I do get letters, which are really great from them, but so there are new people coming into this, and most of the kids' books I've done have been, basically based on the Grimm's fairy tales and mythology and things like that. That I think, the same kind of stuff that I kind of, got into reading, with. So
Well,
hopefully it'll be the same for them.
it's like I find it fascinating because this is like composites, all right? you have these great stories from the past and you create new stories by intermixing them. And it's just a tremendous talent to have. It also requires you maybe you don't even think of it as research, but watching all these things, reading these books requires a lot of research to do these stories, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't consider it really
I
research
didn't think I didn't
because,
say.
yeah, because I would be doing it anyway, you know.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. And even when I've had to research things, which I have, of course, I don't
Hmm.
mind it. I think that's part of the whole. That's part of the game, you know. Um, in fact, there's times that I really have enjoyed research, but it's frequently necessary if you want to. Um, Try to especially in the Sherlock Holmes book I'm writing right now. It seems like about every 3 or 4 pages I have to stop and look something up to make sure, okay, did they have this then,
Oh, that's a
you
good
know,
point.
and making sure that a certain kind of technology existed in 1915, for example.
Hmm.
And if so, you know, how did they use it and what did it look like and stuff like that. And that slows things down, but it also helps you immerse yourself in that particular, you know, era.
No, that's a good
um,
point, and you do have to do research. I'm writing something that'll probably never be read, but I needed to find out what a street market seller was in London in 1845, and I
mm.
learned it was a costermonger. Okay. So little things like that, are part of the writing skills, right? W I want
Yeah, yeah.
I want
What are you writing, if I may ask?
okay, well, I might as well confess. I'm trying to write a book of 4 or 5 staves that would be a sequel to A Christmas Carol, all right?
Oh, wow, wow.
Yeah, and so I've written stave 1, which is Scrooge meeting and apologizing to Belle, and so but I mean, you'll probably this is probably the last you'll ever hear of it, to be honest, but I am gonna finish all 5 of the
Well, I
staves
hope not. That sounds
by
wonderful.
I am gonna finish all I've published about 20 short stories, so I'm a very minor writer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I hope someday I hope to get it done by the middle of the year. Now I want a question for you. What is a bucket list topic that you haven't tried yet in your life that you're thinking about?
Oh, wow. Um, Something I'd like to write about, you mean?
Yeah.
Um, I kind of feel like, in a lot of ways, I've been extraordinarily lucky enough to have accomplished most all of them.
Mhm.
The weirdest thing is most of them came to me. I didn't have to go looking for them, so it's almost like, I don't know. It's been my careers have been very, very strange in
Mhm.
that regard. It's like I rarely had to look for work. It seemed like it was being presented. It just kind of came up when
Mhm.
I needed it. Um, I don't know. I think it used to be that, like, of all the various characters that I've written and so forth that aren't my own, that I would really have wanted to write a Doc Savage novel,
Okay.
because I was a big Doc Savage fan as a kid. And but I did finally get a chance to kind of do that. One of the conventions, Doc Con, I think it's called,
Mhm.
some years ago, they would do uh, their version of an old time radio play, like the Shadow had,
Mhm.
but they wanted to do them with Doc.
Mhm.
And Doc did have a radio show for a while, very, very briefly. And so they asked me if I would like to write it for them, and they were actually going to perform it, which they did. And it was a version of the Doc Savage book, The Monsters, which is my favorite
Mhm.
of the
Mhm.
Docs. So I got to do that. So that one's kind of that longing has kind of faded
Mhm.
from my enthusiasm a little bit, because I felt like at least I got to touch on Doc,
Uh-huh.
and that's fine.
Okay.
So I don't know what it would be really. I think that,
Well, you've
you
written
know
by
I,
so
I
many
mean,
right now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm still with Sherlock Holmes, and I'm not. When this is done, there's probably another one going to be behind it somewhere along the line. So I'm not done with him either.
Good. Good.
Um, so it'll. I don't know. I'm also on my own writing another children's book that has a Frankenstein theme to it
Oh,
right
that's
now.
fantastic.
So I'm doing that too. So
Okay.
yeah. So there's that. Wish I could give you a more definitive
No, that's
answer, but
okay. I'm sure I mean, there's always in
I,
another year, you think of something else. Well,
That's true.
Martin, I
Well, I mean,
wanna oh, go
I've
on.
written Superman, I've written Batman, and those are the two main
Okay.
mainstream comic book characters I wanted to write
Mhm.
because they're characters that everybody knows,
Oh, definitely, yeah.
and kind of what I got into this too. But how I got into it, but as far as I think one of the reasons why I've lasted is because I've been one of those kind of what I call middle tier writers
Mhm.
that the top tier guys, particularly in the comic book industry, there was a time when a lot of them were making a fortune. I mean, they were really, making a tremendous page rate,
Mhm.
and that the bottom fell out of that as it will, and so they just kind of had to go on to other things, and so a lot of them just kind of vanished. But I never commanded thousands of dollars a page, and so somehow or another I was the guy that stuck around and that they could count on for making the deadlines. And that's one of the reasons why I think I'm still around when so many of them seem to have vanished to the ether.
Oh, that's great. Lots of endurance there then. Hey, I wanna thank you, Martin. Thank you for this
Oh,
conversation of roughly an hour. I'm gonna I'm gonna go find your other Sherlock Holmes books and see if I can also find some of these, Edgar Rice Burroughs 'cause, they were my childhood friend stuff too, and I'm grateful you're part of the genre and presenting these things for people to read and keeping the interest going. I have to give this a little spiel right now. We're Plan 9 Crunch, and we're at YouTube. Give us a subscribe. And we're at TikTok, although my daughter usually does that. And we're at Plan 9 Crunch podcast and blog on Facebook. And we have a blog. We have a blog, conventional blog called plan9crunch.com, which me and my son and Steve Stones have done for since 2008. Although my son just started
oh wow.
recently.
hmm I didn't
But
know it was that long.
oh yeah, yeah, it's over 1,000 posts now on there, I think.
Oh my gosh.
But I want to say thank you very much, and that's